much for having me. Again, I'm Rusty Holland. I'm the Executive Director of Concerned Hotline. I've been there as an Executive Director for about 6 years now. I took over for our last Executive Director who had a nervous breakdown. I was President of the Board and I stepped in to fill the role, and before you know it, careful what you wish for. I've been there for 6 years as the Executive Director, but I've been with Concerned Hotline for 20 years in one capacity or another. And we'll get a little bit more to that last capacity here in a second, but just real quickly, can you just give me a show of hands of people that are familiar with Concerned Hotline? So about half, a little more than half. That's pretty good. Concerned Hotlines joined at the hip with Warren County. In 1968, the Northern Shenandoah Valley had the highest suicide rate of returning veterans from Vietnam in the United States per capita.
Whoa.
There were no services. And unfortunately what was happening is veterans were returning and they were going to Dickey Ridge and they were throwing themselves off the mountain to kill themselves. And some local philanthropic people got together and said, what are we going to do to help this? And there were 4 or 5 individuals. Some of you might remember Dr. Kit Gonzalez, who was a psychiatrist who worked with Northwestern for a while in private practice forever, was one of them. Another founder was Betty Johnston, who lived in Winchester forever and was really instrumental in taking this from a small volunteer with like 4 people answering the phone. Today we have 42 volunteers plus 2 paid employees. We answer the phone for the Health District 7, which is, as you know, about 250,000 people. So I like to say we're there for 250,000 people 24 hours a day. So what do we do now? Well, we started as a suicide prevention hotline, and all the different machinations of organizations that have been around for 51 years, we hang our hat on suicide prevention, but we've done information and referral. We're in the age of Google. We really don't need to do a whole lot of information and referral activity anymore because people can find their own information so much easier, but we still do it. And we publish, some of you are probably familiar with the Concerned Hotline source book. We've been publishing this for over 30 years. And a lot of people keep these on their desk, and I brought a few with me if you'd like one. These basically have resources for the entire Health District 7. A lot of school counselors keep them on their desk. People in private practice keep them on their desk. So we print this for our information and referral. But one of the things that we've kind of evolved into is what we call a compassionate hotline. And what that means is that there's always somebody on the line to talk. It doesn't matter what you want to talk about. If you have some stress or some sort of crisis in your life, or you're just feeling alone or despondent, you can pick up the phone and call one of our numbers. We support 4 numbers in the Valley, and somebody will answer the phone and listen to you. We don't give advice. We use active listening skills to try to redirect people to be able to problem solve on their own. We use our resource book as well as the computer to try to find ways to connect people. One of my great stories that I personally had a phone call from a young man. I was in the office one day, the phone rang, the young man called. He had an accent, and I thought he was calling from somewhere in Page County, but he turned out he was from Belgium. Wow. And he had just been diagnosed with HIV. And he was going to see his doctor for the first time. He was scared to death. And I'm like, well, where are you calling from? He said, I'm calling from Belgium. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this guy from Belgium? Well, while he was lamenting his diagnosis with me, I got on my computer and I found a support group for HIV in the township next over from him, gave him the information. He went to his doctor's appointment, went to the support group, called back the next week, same time. I got him again. He said, I just want to say thanks, because if it wasn't for you, I don't know what I would have done the other day. I was really at my wit's end. Which is kind of cool. So that's concern to me, reaching halfway across the globe to try to help someone else. So we do take calls mostly from this area, but we're also open to anyone at any time, 24 hours. We have a lot of callers from outside the area. So how do we do what we do? We are a volunteer-based organization. All of our listeners, except for 2 paid staff, myself and a volunteer coordinator, answer the phones. So we train our volunteers in-house. The most important skill that we train is active listening. We can all talk about grief and loss. We can all talk about mental illness. We can all talk about homelessness or looking for resources. But the bottom line is we've got to be there for people in crisis. So we spend a lot of our time on that suicide. But if we're not using active listening skills, we're not going to get anywhere with anyone. So we train, try to do 4 trainings in-house a year. We also do trainings in something called ASSIST. Anybody in here familiar with ASSIST? I know CM would raise your hand. ASSIST stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, and it's a training to teach face-to-face suicide intervention. So if someone, what we call, one of the words we use is, if someone's putting out invitations for suicide, you know, like when you hear somebody say something like, you know, I just can't take it anymore. Or I really don't know how I'm going to go forward. When people say things like that, they're giving out invitations that something is amiss. So we pick up on those invitations and immediately say, you know, when people are saying things like that, they might be talking about suicide. Are we talking about suicide today? And if they say yes, well then we go into action with our ASSIST training. But if they say no, I'm like, that's great. You know, so let's move on and figure out what it is that's bothering you. So we do the ASSIST trainings, and there are a couple different levels. There's a safe talk training that we do that's kind of like ASSIST 101. And we also do something called Suicide to Hope, which is for providers only, people who do behavioral health providing. So we kind of hang our hat also on this training module that we do. So we're trying to place suicide interventionists throughout the community so every community gets safer by the number of people who are trained to intervene. And I put it out there and invite all of you. You know, Michelle is on our board and a wonderful Warren County representative for our board. If you see these trainings or if Michelle talks about them, these are great trainings. We always offer them for free. They're at least a $250 cost for that. So we will have some more coming up. So if you're interested, you can contact myself or Michelle. So the one thing I kind of want to talk to you about is funding. Imagine that. So where we got our funding? Our 2 major funders are Northwestern. We are a contractee. We're the largest contractee for Northwestern Community Services. They pay us on a monthly stipend basis. We've been a partner with them since 1979. So they were started off in Winchester and then moved down here to Warren County. And so I've been working pretty closely for the last 20 years with Northwestern. We used to provide their suicide prevention hotline for them. That's what we did. And 3 years ago, some of you might be familiar with Senator Cree Deeds, who had a terrible accident and his son slashed him and then committed suicide. And there was a big awareness of bed spaces for people that were experiencing mental illness or some sort of crisis situation. And they changed the legislation and said in order to answer those phones, you have to have a master's degree. Now, how many people do you think, let's just take Warren County, how many people in Warren County have a master's degree to answer a phone at 2 o'clock in the morning for someone who might be in crisis? They have a very hard time filling those roles. So we can no longer provide that particular service for them, but we still are a part of them because people are so familiar with our numbers. So we have not changed our numbers. Everybody's like, why don't you go to an 800 number? Because I believe firmly that if you call a number that's got your exchange in it, you're going to go, wow, this is a neighbor. This is somebody who lives right here and understands me. Somebody picks up the phone and says to me, I live on a mountain in Linden. I know exactly where they are. You know, our listeners know exactly. We train geographically too, so our listeners know where people are calling from. So Northwestern is our largest funder. Our second largest funder is Valley Health, and we used to do the same thing for Valley Health. However, with the onslaught of, how do I say this, combining forces with Valley Health, they have begun to whittle away at our funding. And so we're always looking for new opportunities. And the reason I brought it up today is because we're about 4 weeks out from our largest fundraiser of the year. Has anybody ever heard of the Concerned Hotline Friday Fish Fry that we have in Winchester? I started 20 years ago cooking fish for this. I cook about 1,100 pounds of catfish, and we serve about 2,200 people. Last year we netted a little over $31,000 in a single day event. And it rained, so we're hoping for some nice weather. I did bring some flyers and I have some posters. If anyone would like one, if you have a place of work or something and you'd like to put up something, the Fish Prize coming up, and you'll notice, one of the things I'm really proud of is you'll notice all the partners on the bottom of our flyers. We have outstanding partners, and they really help with our special event funding. We're also funding through special grants. I know obviously you're familiar with that. We have received quite a bit of funding, excuse me, in the last 20 years from several of the local banks. And it's amazing how the banks seem to be stepping up and giving more money to these smaller agencies. There's a lot of community foundations that are coming through the banks, and we're very pleased that we happen to be a recipient. We also do service organizations, the Rotaries, the Lions Club, Kiwanis, all have been very generous with us in the past, and that's what's brought us 51 years into the future. I have a personal connection with Concerned Hotline in that my mother was one of the individuals that helped found it. And so I remember as a little tyke, I know that was a long time ago, running around listening to them talk about what they were going to do with this Concerned Hotline. And a relative of mine, and some of you might remember, and I'm sure Judge Sharp remembers Henry Whiting, who was a judge in this area and was on the Supreme Court of Virginia for a while. Well, his wife was one of our founders, and Henry was instrumental in helping us draw the program up and get everything off and running. So we've got a long history of family involvement, community involvement, but one of the things that I think sets us apart from everyone is we really don't do anything but listen. And we hope that individuals call us and problem solve on their own, but how many people do you know that you just call and listen to you instead of trying to tell you what to do? You need to do this, I think you should, or the words that kind of say, well, wait a minute, are you really hearing what I'm saying? So we spend a lot of time training that active listening skill. I challenge each one of you. I have some cards up here. We call these first aid cards. These have our numbers throughout the valley on them. If you have one of these in your pocket, if you run into someone who's in need of anything for any reason, you could give them this card and someone will answer the phone and talk to them about what's going on in their life. I've spoken to so many people, thousands of people over the years that I've been with Concerned Hotline. We've done hundreds of suicide interventions and saved a lot of lives. I did a call from Warren County last year where a gentleman had early onset Alzheimer's. He was in his 50s, and his wife had gone to Las Vegas on a business trip, and he went out to the garage and cleaned off the space, put down a tarp in the corner of his garage, and got a pistol and went out into the garage, and he picked up the phone and called Concerned Hotline. And he said, I just want to tell somebody what I'm about to do. I want the paramedics to come and clean up before my wife gets home from vacation from her business meeting, but I don't want her to have to worry about me anymore. We got the first responders there and we saved his life. Because one of the things that we hang our hat on again, there's a special word that I use when I train. There's one thing that someone who calls the hotline in a suicidal moment, there's one thing they have that's to our advantage, and that's ambivalence. If someone's calling a hotline, they're still not quite sure. Now, I have had someone call the hotline and pull a trigger. That's pretty impactful. But for the most part, people who are going to call are ambivalent about doing it. And if they can find someone who's compassionate and who is listening and knows how to communicate with them, then we can save lives. We listen to everyone's problems. We are anonymous, we're confidential, we don't store any numbers, we don't store any names. Every day is a new day, every phone call is a new phone call. I'd like to think that we save lives every day, because when someone calls Concerned Hotline, they're hurting for some reason. And if they didn't have someone available to listen to them, that hurt could continue to grow and grow and grow until we might be dealing with a suicide call. So every time we talk to someone on the phone, I like to think that we're avoiding a crisis for that person individually. So what I'd like to do is just ask you if you have any questions about Concerned Hotline, and I can finish up here in a few minutes, but sometimes I think people are, when I asked you about raising hands, what's Concerned Hotline? It drives me crazy. I've been here for 20 years and I still go out. We've been here since 1968, and what's Concerned Hotline? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. So are there any questions? See hand.